the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors, October 15, 2019 meeting. Can we all stand to say the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So just a couple of announcements before we get started with our agenda. Just want to make sure that all members of the public in attendance, that they may be recorded by video or by audio by other members of the public. The next item is number 4, which is the chair's statement on the meeting conduct and public comment. If you have an agenda for today, you'll find the information that I'm about to read to you. And if you don't have an agenda, there's at the back of the room, and you can see them up in the white black folders. So, as you know, the board recently adopted Resolution 11-2019, establishing regulations for board meeting public comment and participation. Per the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act, only those agenda items in which there is a motion, a second, and a vote will be allowed public comment. Public comment for items on the agenda, not on the agenda, shall be limited to 2 minutes per person. West Goshen residents, property owners, and business owners are permitted to offer public comment. Audience members who become disorderly or who do not abide by these rules may be removed from the meeting room. I trust that all of you are going to be wonderful participants this evening. You never have to do that. All right, so let's move on to item number 5. Board of Supervisors remarks on the daily local news, Kmart closing newspaper article. So when we start, are you going to start now? Sure. Okay, thank you.
Last week there was an article in the Daily Local News, October 4th, thank you very much. The original headline was Kmart to close and apartments will sprout in their place. At no time did this board ever agree to any apartments. It's not zoned for apartments. The developer came in not unannounced, not uninvited. They just wanted to do a proposal on what could be at the site. We didn't have any preliminary information to start with. They came in proposing apartments. The board was cold, to say the least. We then followed up with our inaugural meeting 2 weeks later, where we had our special workshop, roundly rejected by the board. I'm not sure where Bill Vertu got his information. It sounds like social media. It's inaccurate, patently false, and at no time has this board ever considered putting apartments there. It's zone C5, I believe, so traditional commercial, and that's all I have to say.
So, Casey, to your point, I actually spoke to Bill Vertu very early in the morning, around 6:30, when I first saw the article on my iPhone, and I was quite surprised to see that. Bill's explanation to me was that if you read the article, you will see that the actual article that he wrote never mentions that there will be apartments there. What occurred, and it was a little bit of an epiphany for me, I didn't know this works this way, but you have a reporter who writes the story, and then you have a copyright editor who actually comes up with the headline. And the copyright editor, without speaking to Mr. Vertu, came up with the headline that Kmart will be closing to be replaced by apartments, which is, as Casey said, a total falsehood. Sorry for any confusion, but we have been adamantly against apartments in that location, and that's a fact. So if any of you good folks are here for that, and you're upset about that, rest assured that that's not happening. That was a good example of, I guess, what you would call fake news.
So if over the last couple of days or weeks since that article was disseminated, one of the things that we're concerned about is information that's being shared on social media platforms that purport to have accurate information. And while it's up to everyone here in the room to make their own discretionary decisions about whether to listen to that or read about it, I want to encourage residents that are here and residents that are watching our YouTube, and we'll watch it later this week, to know that you can speak to any one of us supervisors about anything that you have on your mind, about any of the issues that are going on in the township. You also have the right to make an appointment with any of our staff who might be the experts on a problem or a concern that you're having, whether it be zoning, whether it might be a public works issue, it might be a streets issue, it might be a finance issue. I want to encourage you to do that first before you rely on a third party that can't be validated in terms of its accuracy and completeness. Thank you. So, any comments from any residents who are here about this issue in particular, the Kmart closing article? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next item. So item number 6 is when we do our monthly reports. This report will be presented by Chief Joseph Gleason. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For the month of September, the West Goshen Police Department responded to 2,100 calls for service, handled 47 alarms, 3 of which were valid, investigated 23 motor vehicle accidents and 54 non-reportable motor vehicle accidents, and allotted 20,321 miles on our patrol vehicles. In addition to other locations, selective enforcement was active on Sunset Hollow Road, Ashbrook Drive, South New Street, Trinity Drive, Kirkland Avenue, Jones Lane, and Phoenixville Pike. Our career development continues. Officers, a busy month with regard to training, so numerous officers attended various trainings, and I'll just say the emergency response team had their monthly training. Officer Grandizio continued with his command and leadership program. We had our range masters were recertified as instructors. The entire department completed their required CPR and first aid training. And Sergeant Cotter attended adolescent mental health training. Our officers also completed their fall firearms training. We attended crime scene photography, speed timing device operations, negotiator training, and survivors of domestic violence. So that's it for the general report. I would ask that there's flyers in the back of the room with regard to Ready Chesco. We've been pushing this for about 2 years now. It's a service that you can register through the Chester County Department of Emergency Services to provide you information regarding inclement weather, serious inclement weather issues, catastrophic events, God forbid, etc. And then also Smart 911, you can register your residents so that if for some reason you can call 911 and can't provide us immediate information during the course of that. There's certain information that you can put into the computer system that will just automatically generate to us. So if you're having a health issue or a health concern, you don't have to be specific with regard to that when you call us. It will automatically generate that information for us so we can assist you. You can also put in there if you have a hiding key for your residents, anything like that, that can either assist us or the fire department or ambulance with regard to faster assistance to you as a resident. And lastly, this coming Friday, October 18th from 6:30 to 8:30, the West Goshen Police Department Juvenile Unit in cooperation with the Learning Experience of Westchester will be hosting a trunk or treat at 915 Old Fern Hill Road at the Medical Center. There'll be games, music, prizes, and treats. Any member of the community is welcome to attend. And basically, you can register, bring your kids, decorate a car, whatever. It's a little give back with regard to Halloween. So it's on our Facebook page and on the website. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from the Fire Marshal's report, including Goshen Fire Company and Good Fellowship Ambulance Company, presented by Fire Marshal Andrew Testman. Oh, but John Beswick is going to take her place.
Taking her place.
Thank you, John.
The Fire Marshal's report for September. She did a total of 38 inspections, 7 UNOs, 1 walkthrough, 10 sprinklers, 2 fire alarms, 9 framing, 1 tank, 2 residential files, 5 underground fire lines, and 1 fire life safety. And then she had 12 fire calls, 1 house fire, 3 car fires, 5 fire alarms and 2 electrical fires and 1 gas leak. And she had 1 fire call follow-up and 2 meetings.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to stay as well and give us the building officials report presented by building official John Beswick?
Sure. For the month of September, there was a total of 110 permits, 26 building, 18 electrical, 4 fire protection, 14 HVAC, 11 plumbing, 5 roofing, 6 zoning, and 14 UNOs, 3 ENS, 1 sewer tapping connection, and 8 road occupancies. The estimated cost of construction was $3,365,467.91, and the permit fees were $38,420.98. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to make a little change up in the agenda. We're going to move to item number 14, discussion of a proposed zoning amendment for the R3C infill proposal for Alcalade properties located at 325 North Five Points Road and adjacent residential commercial parcels. Ryan's going to take that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. By way of introduction, this involves a proposed zoning ordinance amendment. However, it's not before the board this evening for vote, but rather for discussion purposes. The zoning ordinance amendment public hearing, if the board so desires, could take place at the supervisor's November 19th public meeting. The amendment itself would result in a change to township zoning, both text and map, whereby it would create a new R3C residential infill district. The rezoning would apply to residential parcels. Just by way of kind of zoning concept, it's always good to have and avoid nonconformities. With this particular area that the ordinance is focusing on, you have properties that are in large part in nonconformity. And what that means is their lot sizes vary between 10, 11, and 12,000 square feet in large part. There are exceptions. Whereby the R3 zoning district as it currently exists requires minimums of anywhere between 18 and 33,000 square feet. So these properties are undersized from a R3 zoning perspective. What the ordinance amendment would do would be essentially bring a lot of those properties into conformity with these zoning desires and concepts and objectives. It would essentially create a situation where residents of this affected area wouldn't automatically need to go before the township's zoning hearing board and seek variance relief for things such as driveway, repaving or extension, sheds, garages, those sorts of things. So it could alleviate some of the red tape or regulation, so to speak. I don't think it's any secret that this particular zoning objective is being spearheaded by Accolade and the property located at 325 North Five Points Road. That's kind of how this issue came to light and how this draft ordinance came to be. Accolade initially proposed a by right plan. That Accolade property that I'm referring to is right out back here, just east of Paoli Pike behind the BB&T Bank. It proposed a by right plan with a proposed daycare use and some residential uses. It's since come back with a revised plan for, I believe it's 10 residential dwelling units and stormwater management facilities. 11, okay. We've previously heard from Attorney John Jaros on this subject matter, but tonight in John's absence, I believe Deborah Scholsky is here from Riley Riper, and she can speak specifically to components of the plan should the board have any questions. But again, this matter is not up for vote tonight. It's merely a discussion item to see what the board wishes to do by way of timing and public hearing.
So it's my understanding that there has been at least one interaction of a group of people being able to speak to the township officials about the about the property that happened recently?
This has been before the planning commission, correct, Rick?
Yes.
As a general discussion item.
But we haven't had a chance to have that conversation directly with them, right?
We've had Accolade in here a few times.
No, I mean,
Oh,
with
with the public,
residents.
no.
We have quite a few people, I believe, are from that neighborhood.
Yes.
Am I right? Okay.
And you all received the mailing, I assume that's why you're here? Okay, good.
Okay, good. So would it be helpful if we could hear a little bit more from Rick in particular about this from a zoning standpoint as
Yeah,
well?
Bill and Rick,
Bill,
absolutely.
yeah.
So in the time that I've been here, we've actually had 3 zoning hearings, which revolved from people, one person wanted to put a patio, the other one wanted to do a shed, and the other one wanted to do I believe it was an addition. Now, this was only because their properties were non-conforming. They couldn't meet the area bulk requirements of the R3 zoning district, which was an undue hardship to these folks. I mean, it's not something, so they were given the relief that they sought, but there was a monetary loss to them to have to get this relief because they had to pay to go before the zoning hearing board. Because we, as the zoning officer or as the board of supervisors, we don't have the right to waive any of that zoning issues. That can only be done by the zoning hearing board. So when this came before us, we thought that this was a great idea because it would help these folks back here, anyone who wanted to do improvements to their property, because it would reduce their need to have to go to the zoning hearing board. And it would really improve their abilities to do things. It would take them out of being a non-conforming lot, which also puts further restrictions on them because then they can only expand so much on their property as well by a certain percentage. So from a zoning perspective, I believe, in my opinion, it's a good change for these folks.
I would agree as well from a land development and subdivision standpoint. A significant portion of the lots surrounding this parcel are, as Ryan stated, 10 to 12,000 square foot lots, which do not conform to any current residential zoning district. When I say many, there are about 300 lots that are non-conforming. So it's not 2 or 3 here or there, it's a lot. These subdivisions were approved prior to the existence of zoning, and that's why they're non-conforming. But it would certainly streamline land development processes as well as zoning if the lots were conforming in the area bulk. And it does not in any way change the allowable uses on the lots. One of the issues with the by right use or by right plan is that there are 2 existing nonconformities present on the property that would be perpetuated by a by right plan, being the daycare use and the apartment use, which are currently not allowable in either an R3 district or an R3, the proposed R3C district.
For some of the audience members who may not know what a by right is, could you explain that so they're aware of what that is in more detail?
Sure. There are certain requirements in the zoning ordinance for uses and area and bulk requirements, how big a lot has to be, what the frontage is, what the setbacks are, what uses are allowed on the lot. And by right means that your parcel conforms to what the zoning ordinance says it should be. So since that's the case, as long as you want to do anything with that property that is conforming to the current zoning ordinance, you just come in, get a building permit, and you do it. If it's non-conforming, if it doesn't comply with those by right factors, that's when you have to go to the zoning hearing board and get variances. It's a much more complicated process.
And if I can just add one more thing to Rick's point about the zoning hearing board, not only does it add money to what the applicant has to put forward for the hearing, but it also adds time. Because when an applicant proceeds with a zoning application, hearing must be held within 60 days. A lot of times their zoning hearing board will render a verbal decision that evening, but sometimes they don't. And if they don't, they can take an additional 45 days to render that decision. So that just holds the individual's project up even further. And when it becomes a by right, you lose the non-conforming issues, then they can just building permit, we approve it, and they start the project. And to the point of what would go away under this, Mr. Beswick and Ms. Testa and I have been after that property several times because of the, let's just say, the deplorable condition of the apartments and the property maintenance issues that go along with the lack of property maintenance. And it seems like there for a while, we have been in contact with the property owners a lot. And I was constantly receiving complaints from neighbors regarding things, and still to this day, recently about rodents. So this may also help with the beautification of the area, because it's going to take away the apartments and the several abandoned buildings that aren't in the best of shape on the property.
Will this change in the ordinance, in the zoning, have any negative impact on the residents? Can you think of any examples that might possibly occur?
In my opinion, I don't believe so. I think to me, it's a positive, and that's what I've been telling residents that have called, because I don't see any negative aspect to this change. I only see positive. I guess sometimes people get worried when they see that their zoning's being changed, because a lot of times people don't understand it, but they're not losing any rights. They're actually gaining rights.
Do we have time to do some public comment? Have people- Do you want to?
You said you were out there many times. What was your enforcement?
So
What did you do as an enforcement?
Sir, I'm sorry, could you come up to the podium?
I can't, Keith. There's more we have to say after that.
I'm sorry, yeah, we gotta get it. Thank you.
I just need to hear you through the microphone so everyone else can.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry, your name again, sir?
Steve,
Right, thank you.
I left your message. We've got in here back. Okay. You say you were out there numerous times on complaints. What did you do to enforce it?
So we actually we issued notices of violation. Mr. Beswick, myself, and Ms. Testa, who's the fire marshal, issued notices of violation. The property owners did spend a lot of money on the apartment building because we were to the point where if they didn't correct these things, the tenants that were living in those apartments were going to be removed based on the property maintenance code and building code violations that were found. A lot of times, we try and verbally get things fixed before we go to enforcement. Generally, if the property owner, if I get a complaint, I contact the property owner, and they will generally take care of the situation with a reasonable amount of time. But I think the property, in my opinion, I think the property is just too much for them to handle.
It is. It's a lot for them. The other question was, you said it could have went either way, that the daycare and the apartments would stay.
They would
stay.
The applicant has already said that they would stay because actually that's a profitable thing for them because they could continue to rent those apartments out and it would be the non-conforming use could stay and they could find if they wanted to they could find another daycare to move in there. So that would add additional traffic because I'm sure they're not going to let the building sit empty. They're probably going to try. They would probably try to find a daycare.
What is the plan for construction when this happens? Where is the construction entrance going to be?
Well, I think
We also have.
Like you sent this out here. You can't read this.
Well, it was just a notice to get.
I know, but yeah, give us something to see so we can actually see the plan.
I couldn't send 300 full-size sheets out. You have to understand that. It was just to invite you
Well,
guys.
you could have put his rendering on white paper. It would have shown up a little better. But
I'm sorry. I was
Okay.
just trying to get you guys to come to the meeting and ask. We'd obviously.
we're all here. We're here.
Sure. Let's take a 2-minute recess.
yeah.
Okay. Do anyone of you want to speak?
Also, I received something in my driveway, but something that took place last week for the planning commission. Were you guys here for that?
We were present.
Okay, we didn't know about that, so we didn't know you were having something prior to this.
Well, the instructions from the board was to invite you to this meeting.
Right.
We haven't gone through the formal process yet, so
Right.
the planning commission has to see this officially.
But nobody else knew something was going on last week until someone threw something in the driveway, which I didn't notice until after the fact. They were like, right. That came from the neighbor, not from me.
Herschel, human attorney on behalf of the equitable owners. We also have our professional engineer here. And I apologize, we were downstairs, we thought we were on the agenda, chit-chatting down there. So I may have missed some of what you said, and you may have covered some of the sketch or some of the history of what, nothing? Okay, good. So then we didn't really miss too much other than the...
Can you turn around and face us?
Yeah, we're going to ask you to go to the podium.
Yeah, you got it.
So anyhow, I was saying that, again, I apologize that we were downstairs. I didn't, we missed some of what you said in the beginning, but it sounds like you didn't actually discuss anything dealing with the specifics of the proposed plan. Just by way of some background, I think the supervisors are aware that there is quite a bit of history to this property, and also with my client's involvement with the property starting over a year ago, with them suggesting the possibility of a zoning amendment, and then they subsequently submitted a by right plan and got some feedback from the township that they would like to pursue another amendment, consistent with some of the thoughts of what the township engineer and zoning officer mentioned, given the fact that this area is non-conforming and it would be a benefit to the community to bring it into conformance and allow people to be able to put improvements and decks and those types of additions onto their house without having to go through the legal process of a variance, which, as Mr. Webb indicated, can be pretty onerous in addition to costly, and then costly to the township to have to put out notices too to all the surrounding properties of that process. So it is quite a bit of a legal process, and there's obviously, in addition to benefit to my client, there's a benefit to the community as well. But quite frankly, from our perspective, my clients are prepared to proceed either way they would like, since we've been accommodating and working with the township over the past year. We certainly would appreciate proceeding with this ordinance amendment, and we can discuss in a moment. I'll turn it over to our engineer to kind of walk you through what's being proposed. But as mentioned, there is by right non-conforming uses. There's 6 apartment units, a daycare which still could be operated on the property. We're proposing to subdivide the property into 11 units, which we think really is not going to have any adverse impact on the character of the neighborhood, especially given the uses, the non-conforming uses that could continue to exist on the property. So again, we don't see, similar to your township staff, we don't see any negatives from the community perspective or from my particular client's perspective. So with that introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Jack Robinson, and he can kind of just explain for you what the sketch is at this point for this particular property.
Good evening. I think even before you, so I won't try to get into too much detail, but you're aware of where the property is between South Veronica Road and Five Points Road. And we show our proposed access along Isabel Lane. The proposal is 11 lots. Technically we had 12, but I'll say sacrificed one for a stormwater management lot. So it's 11 proposed dwellings. One would be fronting on South Veronica, and the other 10 would be along the cul-de-sac road we're showing. The cul-de-sac road right away is the same width as the existing roads around it, and the lot sizes are similarly the same lot sizes around it. This, if you zoom out, not that you can on my plan, but if you zoomed out, say, at Jessica Views and saw this property, you would almost see like this is the one anomaly, and everything around it was 10,000 per foot lots. So when we looked at this, we said, this is an infill project. This is kind of like the last piece of the puzzle, literally, if you saw the whole area. You'll see the lots across the street in our plan and the lots that are behind it. And all of those lots are in that 10,000 square foot range. So these lots really match the area. The other benefit to this is that the cul-de-sac road would put all the traffic on Isabel and eliminate driveways, including the existing driveway, which I think the township and some others have expressed has been kind of an issue or just a concern just along 5 Points Road. So you wouldn't have any driveways there, and the traffic would be very, very controlled at that one intersection at Isabel.
What about the traffic's going to cut through Veronica? How are we going to address that? Because we have nothing coming down Veronica right now. We're going to have people cutting through the neighborhoods. Do you want to address that?
You mean?
As a board, not you.
Okay. You mean existing traffic?
Right.
I don't believe this development would contribute to that in one way or the other. But yeah, that's the board's.
Not to the property, no, but people are going to be using this cut through now, which we already did in traffic, so. But, you know.
In my opinion, this development is, you know, there's a by right plan, as you've all seen, with 4 houses, and then the existing daycare. You know, if the daycare were to open up plus 4 houses, that's definitely more traffic than 11 houses. Without doing a traffic study, I can say that just right off the bat. So, I mean, I think this is a much more controlled, lower volume land than I think what could be under the existing zoning.
I guess we'll have to hear what other people have to say. Our concern, and Matt knows, we spoke about the property owners, what they're going to do on our behalf for people that come up to it. I don't want someone looking down 2 stories down into my house. So that's a concern for me.
I mean, all of the things we could do is we go through the development, we could, you know, we have, there are buffering requirements.
Yeah, I don't want to put it finished, it's just going to be weeds.
Well, I don't think people are going to be in weeds. I think you're going to have some very nice houses.
We're talking about that.
This is, we're talking about renting out. This is when we get to the, if we get to the land.
Well, that's going to have to put in.
Work with the surrounding neighbors. We talked to a number of them after one of the meetings, and while there is no landscape buffer requirement, we talked about improving the buffer system with fence lines along that, basically along the back of the property.
Well, I have a question. The original by right plan for 4 houses, you mentioned the daycare. Is that actually something that they're intending to do with the original by right plan? To run open the daycare? Because as I understand it, now the daycare is closed.
That's correct, Val. I think they would not leave the property empty. There's existing apartments and there's a daycare viability. So
My intention would be to subdivide it, build out the single-family homes, and find an investor or a daycare company to take that other part of the property. Because there's certainly value there. You know, and whichever way we go with this, we're going to, you know, if we keep that property, it's going to be kept as existing use unless whoever takes it at that point decides to try something else. But there's value in rental units, and there's value in the possibility of relocation.
Understood about the rental units. Just a daycare? Is that what you're looking towards?
This would not be. This would be. I would be looking for an investor to take that property over.
Okay.
I'm not in the daycare business. I'm not. You know, I'm not. It's not looking to gain rental properties out of this. You know, if we went to buy right property way, it would be single-family homes, which is, you know, what we do.
Which is 4 of them.
4 of them.
Okay.
And then taking that other part of the property, leaving the existing non-conforming use in place, and selling it to an investor.
And just so that the audience understands it, and myself also, if that was the case, say you had to go with the original by right plan, and you gave it to an investor, you handed it off, saying, okay, and they did have the daycare in there, that traffic would be coming on 5 Points Road, correct?
Correct. Yep, existing driveways.
Okay. All right. Or whatever business that it
Whatever it is, yes. Well, I think they're limited at that point because it's already non-conforming. They have to keep their existing, whatever it was being used for.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. So it either be apartments, daycare, one of the 2
With
combinations.
with traffic going out into 5.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
So I believe a couple of years ago, it was an operating daycare, so at one point there was a lot of traffic
Yes,
coming
yeah.
out on the 5 Points.
But
And there's
something
still
that-
the ability for us to go back to that.
That's a consideration.
Now, do I have this straight?
Ma'am,
If this,
Jack, come on up here. This is your code.
It's getting kind of, do you have any more questions?
Oh, yeah, because you have a lot of questions.
Okay.
One of my neighbors. That's all yours.
May I make it your name again, Jack?
Jackie Riddell,
Riddell, R.I.D.
R-U-D-E-L-L, and I live on Isabel. There were some of us that were here at the meeting last Tuesday, and I think I heard correctly that if the zoning does not get changed from R3 to R3C, that the existing daycare and the apartments, you couldn't have housing built on it. It would have to stay the way it's zoned. But if if it gets changed to an R3C, then houses could be developed on that whole 4 acres? Is that, do I have that right?
Well,
Generally, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to keep that straight in case people didn't understand that. Yes, and I have another question, because my property butts up where the cul-de-sac road is going to exit onto Isabel. There are a lot of us that are concerned about the traffic. There are accidents at the intersection of Isabel and 5 Points Road. You have a stop sign at the end. If you've got people trying to come out, that's going to back way up. And that, I don't know if I'm putting the cart before the horse, but I'm a little concerned that we don't have an exorbitant amount of traffic coming out there, how that's going to be handled.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
With regards to the original by right plan. So the original by right plan, they would subdivide the property off. The daycare facility and the apartments would be on one parcel, which they would sell to an investor. Then they had a right to build an additional 4 houses. The thing that I think troubled some of us was the fact that the 4 new houses, their driveways would be coming out on the 5 Points Road. So you would have 4 new driveways coming out into such a short span roadway, along with the current driveway the entrance and exit that is currently there for the daycare facility would stay. I think that answer what you were looking for?
Well, yes and no. You know, my concern is, because literally that runs right by property, are we going to have cars backed out trying to get out of the cul-de-sac road onto Isabel? What happens if somebody's coming off of 5 Points and coming up Isabel and they want to make a left-hand turn into the cul-de-sac road, whatever that name would be? I'm concerned about people coming around these corners and not good visibility now. I'm concerned about people coming around the corner and not realize traffic's backed up. I just want to make sure some of this is addressed by somebody that's much more knowledgeable. And believe me, but that is one of my concerns.
And I think it's,
Can I ask you to come to the podium this time, please? Thank you.
you have a question?
Not now.
Hello, Matt Hughes from Macro Properties. I am the equitable owner. Just to speak as far as what we're talking about here, a lot of this discussion is starting to lead down into the land development side of it, which I don't think we're really at. I think we've talked a little bit about buffers. I think after one of the meetings, we also talked to a couple of homeowners about the sightline issues and so forth, and all that stuff that we're talking about is going to be addressed if this plan gets approved and we go through the 11 lot subdivision plan. It'll all get addressed by the township engineer, the planning commission, and go through that review process. So all these sightline issues, that we just can't go through this process and just put it on the plan and say we're just going to throw out all these other issues. We'll have to conform to the guidelines as far as sightlines, traffic studies, and everything else that goes along with it. So there's a long process ahead of us if the zoning amendment gets approved and we go down that road. So to address the concerns about the fencing, that's going to be dealt with. While that's not part of the subdivision requirements, we talked about this. Yes, we want this to be, we want this to be a good project for the community. It benefits us, it's going to benefit you. So when we talk about fence lines and buffers and landscape buffers, and I know you had a question about how is the basin going to be maintained, all that will be talked about, but there's going to be an HOA for that 12th lot, which will be the HOA owned lot, and it will be controlled, maintained, and kept in good condition. So there's a lot of things that we'll go into this when we get to that point. But I think we talked about the planning commission meeting last week that we're more along the lines of discussing the text amendment and whether or not it's a good thing, a bad thing, or whatever it might be, is from the township's standpoint. So we'll have to answer as many questions as you guys might have for us as far as the land development side of it, but I think we're going to be out here again at some point when we go through that process, and we'll let you all back at that time to answer any questions, if we go through the process.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who
someone
would
else
like to
up.
step up to speak specifically about the ordinance and the zoning?
Just remember now.
Yeah, I keep hearing about how this is going to benefit us by waiving what we can do to our properties.
Please turn your phone off. please.
He is.
Okay.
Just trying.
Sorry, it just interferes with the equipment. Sorry.
Richard Trevecchio.
Thank you.
Trevecki. To me, I only know one person that ever sought out a variance and got it easily enough. The only thing I see this variance is for is so you can pack 11 properties in that little lot. And the biggest flaw that she was just discussing about is coming out of Isabel. It's going to be a traffic nightmare there. I understand the gentleman who already spoke about the houses looking in his backyard and everything like that, but to me, a much more feasible answer, I understand something's going to get built in that lot somewhere at some time, but you don't have to cram 11 houses in there to properly have an exit come out on 5 Points Road as opposed to Isabel, because it would be a nightmare trying to get cars in and out of there on Isabel. You might have to give up a house or two to do it correctly at there. You wouldn't even need this zoning ordinance to do it, because you'd have slightly bigger lots. But as it is right now, that side street, it's just not feasible. If you sit in there, I don't know how many times I've come out of my neighborhood and there were accidents there. 4 cars sitting there, somebody turns in and wants to go in that development, they're going to get stopped there if there's cars sitting there trying to exit there, which happens now. If you had 20 cars or 22 cars, 2 cars per home, into that neighborhood trying to exit there, it's just not going to work. The daycare now has 2 ins and outs over there. You could certainly put a road onto 5 Points from that neighborhood and do the same thing without going on to Isabel. You might have to give up a lot or 2 of those houses. You wouldn't even need the zoning ordinance to do that, unless I'm wrong on that. I just think you're trying to cram too much in there, and where you're coming out on that side road is going to affect too many people negatively, in my opinion.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else? Mr. Potts?
Good evening. Thank you very much. John Pott, 549 Willow Way. A couple of things that I wanted to clarify. You had mentioned, sir, I believe that Accolade came to you with the zoning issue. That's not what I heard from the attorney last week from Accolade, who said to me that they did not want this. They did not push this. In fact, the zoning commission, or somebody, said to them, come back with a different proposal with the 11 properties rather than the 4 properties. That's what I heard, unless I don't have the clarification correct. Mr. Webb, you had said something about that since you've been here, there have been 3 zoning hearings that have been issues, I guess we'll call it. How long have you been here?
It would be 5 years this month.
Okay, so 3 zoning hearings that were an issue in 5 years.
That's because only 3 people have come forward with projects.
Okay.
There would be more if more people came forward with projects.
But my understanding is that there is no issue unless you're changing the footprint. Is that correct?
That is not true.
Okay,
If
well,
you were proposing to put a patio, some people would want to do a shed, decks, additions to your house, those would all become issues under the current zone.
But that's changing the footprint, isn't it?
Not
Well, I just put a deck.
patio.
I just put a deck on my house that was replacing an existing deck, and I had no issue. I had to get a permit, a regular permit. I didn't have to go before the zoning hearing board to do that.
If you're not changing the footprint.
Okay,
of
well, that was,
deck. But this was, the ones that came before us were new.
okay, okay. I think the traffic, frankly, is a real issue. I really do. the previous gentleman made a comment about 22 cars. Yeah, I'd rather have 8 cars, which would be 4. Now, we already have the existing apartments, so that's already traffic there now. So we're adding additional 8 cars, if you look at 4 times 2, versus 22. So I'm happy, well, I'm not even happy with 8, but I'll take 8 versus 22. And the Isabel Lane is a major traffic thoroughfare through our neighborhood. I live in Willow Way, which is Merriweather Farms, the other side of the development. I use Isabel all the time to get out of my development all the way to, like if I'm going to the ShopRite, for example. I use Isabel. I go down there, I make my left onto 5 Points, and I go into the ShopRite. I do not go out onto Paoli Pike. So I think traffic is a problem. And I think the other side issue to this is that traffic light that is there. Now, granted, some of it may be the cause of the traffic going to the Wawa, but the new traffic light that I guess the state put up, that's a major problem, that traffic light. And there is always backup traffic along there. And that's a concern. I think we need to consider that traffic. Now, granted, the development's going to be built no matter what, but again, back to the 8 cars versus the 22 cars. I'm happier with 8. Thank you very much.
It's not 8 cars versus 22 cars.
Okay.
It's 4 single-family lots plus 6 apartments plus a daycare.
Right,
You will definitely have more traffic generated by the by-right plan than you will by the proposed.
But the daycare has been there, and at some point it's been operational, right? And I don't remember ever having traffic issues with the daycare in full operation and the apartments in full operation. I don't ever remember having a traffic problem.
Well, then you won't have a traffic problem now.
Okay, well, I've lived here for 30-some years in that development. The traffic is the worst I've ever seen it right now, and it's all on 5 Points is the traffic problem. And if it gets backed up onto Isabel, I can see that being a major issue. Thanks for your time.
One more, two more.
Hi, my name is Sue Ragusa. I live at the corner of Isabel and Veronica. So my house doesn't necessarily, will not necessarily back up to the new development, but I'm right there on that corner. Rick has been to my house before. Do you remember me, Rick?
Yes.
Yes. I have water issues, right? I'm at the bottom of that hill, and I have sump pumps, and I have water issues, and I did some water remediation. In addition to the traffic, I have a 6-year-old who gets her bus at the end of our street on Veronica and Paoli Pike. If there are cars coming out and going down, because you know they're not going to go out to 5 Points, they're going to cut down Veronica to get onto Paoli Pike, right? So I have a child at a bus stop there. That is certainly a concern. I certainly have issues with the traffic, you know, for me to go out on to 5 Points from Isabel, but I really am concerned about the water issues here because I already get a lot of water, and I know that this is a little bit down the road for this, but I would like for someone to speak to how the water runoff from the new development will be handled. Can you do that? Okay.
Yes, I see you're in the very upper corner, upper red corner, that's your house. The majority, some of this development would actually go to the west. The majority of the development is actually going to go down in the basin. If anything, we're the first house on the right, when you come in the neighborhood on the right, we would cut that off and actually run that water into the basin. Like we haven't gone through design, but we actually did show a basin on there. We wanted that forethought to show the basin in the low spot. So the water would, likely we'll probably have it, we'll design it so that one lot would cut it off and run across the road. So if anything, you're probably going to have the drainage area to your house diminished, cut off to a degree, because we couldn't let it run freely. It would be.
Will there be another sewer on that? Would there be a sewer added or not?
I have to get into the detail, but we're going to send, but the object of this is to send most of the water to that basin and over control what I need to because of what's there. We also have, that basin isn't the only thing. Every lot is going to have at least that's our plan, because we've done stormwater testing actually already. They spent actually more money than most developers spend ahead of time. We've already done set testing for the soil and know that we can get some stormwater. And so I think we believe every lot is going to have an underground bed. So that right there, there's going to be a fair amount of stormwater. But the road is uncontrolled, so you want to send the road into that basin. So it's going to be
So my follow-up to that, I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off, but my follow-up to that would be for you all, that when the developers are done, if I am having water issues, does it then become my problem, or is it something that the township works with me on? You know what I mean? Like where, and I'm not saying you guys aren't going to do a good job, but when you're gone and it's done, you know, is it just like, okay, you have water problems and you got to fix it yourself type of thing?
the townships would certainly, unless it speaks to the township, they would work with you as well as we would. I think what I like to do, and what we've done, especially on an infill project, where you have, especially someone like yourself, you tell us about something ahead of time, we'll document what's going on now. Because that way, if anything gets worse, we'll document it. And if anything, we'll make it better, not worse. So that's the big thing. If we know it ahead of time, you have some kind of documentation of what's going on. That's the best way. And then we can see what happens. Like I said, I think you're going to have less drainage area. We're going to be likely cutting off what currently drains. Right now, I feel it drains down through your house and one next door. It's just uncontrolled right now.
Thank you.
Another thing to consider from the stormwater standpoint is if the by right plan is built, the 4 new lots will have current criteria stormwater controls. The existing large lot will have no stormwater controls, just like it has now.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's a fair amount of impervious on that current property.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just had a quick question. I've heard a lot of residents talk about accidents in that area. So I was wondering, perhaps, Chief, is it possible to get some information, maybe in the past year, the past 2 years, about how many accidents might have occurred 5 Points Road, Isabel Drive?
We can certainly provide 3 years' worth of statistics to Isabel and 5 Points specifically. Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, I think that's what I've been hearing from the residents. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Several folks have mentioned that to me before today, and today it's being mentioned again.
Chris, I think I'll come up and.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
What?
Were you finished with what you said?
Yeah, basically. Get that.
We can do 3 years' worth of accident statistics. I'll get it to Mr. Rowan.
Thank you
I'll
very
bring it
much.
up with one more question tonight, and then we will be having other meetings. with
Oh, yeah,
the
I think the
board.
sight line is what they're talking about, coming off 5 Points. My neighbors here have a hobby berm that people can't see. When they come around that corner, they're worried that traffic's going to be stopped, because after back up coming down, someone's going to come around the corner.
Sure. Yeah, no,
That's what
yeah. But I mean, I'm not saying this is going to be approved, this isn't going to be approved. Either way, they have the right to move forward to put additional houses on. So there's going to be additional traffic one way or the other, because we have a dormant daycare that's going to be operational when we go with Plan 1 and 4 additional houses. Or we're going with these 11 houses, which, maybe it's a 2-car family home, 22.
I can tell you, for the 7 homeowners that back up to it, we want it gone.
You want
We want the property gone.
Yeah, well, that's
It's good property,
people
but
here. But
we
my
need to know what's-
point is, let me just run through this real quick. My point is that either way, it's already a traffic area. That's a big concern. And there's going to be additional traffic, so that perhaps the more knowledge we have, when we get to that phase where we have to talk about additional things, okay? Like you were talking about, the barriers in between your home, their home, site issues. Those things aren't on our table yet, but I would like to get that information, because one way or the other, traffic is going to be an issue, to see what we can do to work with the developer.
Well, we're worried about that, Chris, because they built these things behind 5 acres. And people looking at the 3-story buildings.
Yeah, I get it.
I don't want somebody looking down in my yard. So, without some kind of barriers.
Yes, I'm going to let you have it one more, because I know you've been trying to get our attention.
I'll try. Thank you. Suzanne Duprin, DAP on ILE. We live right, the zoning will not affect my home directly, because we live on the corner of Isabel and 5 Points Road with the so-called berm that people, I've just been accused of people not being able to see around. But our berm has been cut back. However, the traffic on Isabel and 5 Points Road at that intersection, I know this is beating a dead horse, but that traffic is outrageous. Between 4 o'clock and 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night, traffic from Westchester Pike is backed up to the daycare center. It's that heavy. And at the meeting last week, I asked why we can't put a stop sign there, especially if we're putting in 11 new homes, which I'm okay with. If we're putting in 11 new homes, that's a minimum of 11 new vehicles coming in and out of Isabel Lane. And I asked why we can't put a stop sign there, and was told, well, we just can't. And I would like to know why we can't put a stop sign there, or some sort of...
That's not what I said. I said you cannot because it does not meet the warrants for multi-way stop, and I explained what the warrants for multi-way stop were.
You didn't actually.
Yes, I
No, you said it doesn't fit.
No, I said they're irreconcilable site distance issues or the intersection warrants a traffic signal. Those are the criteria for a multi-way stop. And I did explain that to the planning commission.
And then I apologize, I didn't hear it. But
Okay.
if you could you clarify that just a little bit more? I'm not sure what you mean by irreconcilable site issues.
You can't meet the site distance requirements for the intersection without a multi-way stop by PennDOT standards.
So
that's not the case.
Okay, I will have to talk about that later on.
The building is right on the corner. You can't move the building to improve that's an irreconcilable problem.
Okay.
So that would then justify. But if there's an improvement that can be made to improve the site distance, if there's improvement, it has to be on the approach. Take the tree down. Yes, take the berm down.
But the traffic volume has nothing to do with that?
No. Traffic volume
No, it doesn't have necessities. Thank you after that.
Thank you.
If you'd like any further explanation, please feel free to contact me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to encourage anyone here who still has outstanding questions, feel free to send them to the township, and we'll get them routed to the right person to respond to you. Mr. Craig, Mr. Webb. I'm sure
Will we be notified of any other meetings that are going to occur in conjunction to this?
I think we started going through the process with the land development, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, you're just by the process, Ryan, correct me, we have to post every single property because it's a zoning change, so you'll be all notified by a certified letter and a stake with a sign in your front yard, so you will be noticed about upcoming changes to the process for sure.
Well, I meant meetings in terms of because
I would just suggest you go to our website, call us, we're here 50 hours a week. I'm trying to be fiscally responsive. That mailing I sent you might cost us $500. I sent 300 letters out. And it took staff time to do that, obviously, and paper. So I suggest you call us. The Planning Commission is every second Tuesday of the month. We meet every third Tuesday of the month at 7 o'clock. Look at our agendas. They're posted a week in advance. Or call us if you don't see what you're looking for. Again, we're all here 50 hours a week with office hours. So just be in touch with us. Okay?
Can I get emailed out to us this plan you have up here? So it's more
I prefer to post it on the website.
That'll work too. Yeah, you can do that. That's fine.
Okay, we're going to resume where we left off, which will be, actually, I think we're going to do one more special change, number 17.
We have any direction from the board about the next step. Are we going to
Right, so essentially, I mean, we can allow for more time for these discussions, or the board could authorize the advertisement to move forward, as I suggested, whether it be in November and December, but to formally advertise the proposed zoning change to start that formal process before the Planning Commission for recommendation, and then to come before the board for potential adoption. So that's essentially the discussion point tonight.
This is just related to the zoning change.
Yes.
Hi, Deborah Shulsky again. And we would just respectfully request that if the board hasn't already, that they authorize the solicitor to advertise the hearing on the rezoning. I know the Planning Commission reviewed it last week and they were supportive of it and recommending that it proceed.
But by way of advertisement, if the board so chooses, it could be formally advertised and the matter could move forward. Casey is telling me that the Planning Commission next meets on November 12th, and the board is scheduled to meet on the 19th, which would allow for adequate advertisement timeframes.
Casey, the Planning Commission is not meeting in November.
Okay. So the planning commission is not taking any formal action on this?
Planning Commission did.
Oh.
Planning Commission recommended that the process proceed.
It doesn't have to go back to Planning Commission at this point.
Gotcha. So it's strictly up to the board's review.
Then I make a motion to re-advertise.
Public comment?
Yeah.
Anyone have public comment before we make our decision? Mr. Potts, come forward. Yes, please.
Last week at the Planning Commission, and a lot of residents were there at the Planning Commission, and please tell me if I'm wrong about this. I thought the general consensus of all the residents, most of them, the majority of them, was that we're moving too fast on this, and let's just slow the process down. We don't have to go rifling through with the 18-wheeler and crash through the barrier to get this approved. So the letter was sent out specifically to all of us saying, before we do anything, we want to hear from the residents. You're hearing from the residents. So I'm a little bit concerned that the residents don't seem to have a voice, that the residents seem to be speaking, and again, if I'm wrong, please tell me, and the board is not listening. We're telling you to slow down, and everything is going full speed ahead. That's my only comment.
You're right.
I agree.
You're 100% right.
Thank you.
I don't think anybody up there is listening to us.
Well, I would argue that we are listening. That's why you're here, and the things that you've shared with us in terms of your concerns, which I agree, Isabel's already a difficult road to navigate with the existing homes. But now that you've brought those issues forward, and the owners of the property, or the equitable owner, and our staff is aware of it, this will be part of the ongoing process to ensure that this is a safe environment, the roads are safe. We need to get more detail about how it would look before we can commit to saying it's not meeting your expectations. So I would ask that you continue to come to these meetings. We've offered to make sure that you can reach out to any one of us if you want to talk about it. I'd be happy to meet with you personally. And just keep an open mind about it because we're still in the beginning stages. This is simply just to advertise the zoning change.
Madam Chair, I mean, I think that's part of the issue. If we change the zoning, then the issues that some of these concerns we're hearing about will be kind of moot. And I think what I'm hearing from the audience is that they would rather talk specifically about this plan presented. I know it's kind of putting the cart before the horse, but before we change the zoning, which would allow this, why don't we talk about this, how it's going to affect it, how it's going to finally look, before we take that leap of faith changing the ordinance. That's the way I see it.
Correct.
I'm going to support Chris on this because I'm not clear of the difference between the by right impacts to the roads, the traffic that may or may not come with the daycare instituted versus this change. So I do think if you do just have more time to understand A versus B, B being the situation where the zoning is changed. So I personally don't feel that we should move to advertise for the zoning change until we've understood it a little bit better than I do tonight.
We're going to vote on it tonight.
Yeah, but I need to understand more about the process. Why do we need to go forward with advertising for it and spending the money on it if I'm not comfortable yet that this is the right direction to go?
Do we have any issues related to timing?
If we could just
You're
respond.
saying the ordinance can sit. It's not going to affect their plan. For them to move forward.
It's going to affect
It's going to absolutely affect that. And the owner of the property as well, who's been patiently.
Well, you're asking for an exception. We're trying to be open-minded.
So my understanding is, this is not approving the subdivision plan. You guys could approve the zoning amendment. I could go through 6 months of the subdivision process and still get rejected. So,
but if we do the zoning change that you're requesting, the chance of us rejecting this plan is greatly reduced. What we're talking about is 11 homes, that you would get a zoning plan, that you could have these 11 homes that you can't have now.
Understood.
But we don't know everything about how this impacts everyone yet. So it's sort of like the dog chasing its tail. You got to understand these folks here and their concerns too.
I do understand
So
that.
it's an exception that you're asking for. So we are here, we are being patient, we're trying to get everybody's input, and we're the ones on the hot seat.
Understood.
So I stand with Sean on this. I would rather get more information.
And we respectfully, I mean, we did start this process about a year ago. We were prepared to move forward with the buy rate plan, and at the suggestion of the township, we came back to work with everybody on this. And again, the engineer and the equitable owner has put a considerable amount of money into this, getting much more details than most of my clients would at this point, with the engineering, with doing stormwater tests, with checking the soils and looking at traffic and a number of issues. And again, as Matt pointed out, those are all things as we get into the land development. At this point, you're really just approving the zoning. We still have to come back for all these details. There's not much more that coming back another month or two that you're going to be able to decide whether or not to proceed forward with this. I mean,
So I have a question, Bill.
Yes.
Could we basically set up is it R3C for this specific property? I thought the idea was to try to bring in all the other non-conforming lots, but is there a benefit or a risk of not doing it all at once?
You could be accused of doing spot zoning, which would get us in a whole heap of trouble. Because then, if you did that for one, now you're gonna have to do it for a lot of other people, because you set a precedent. There could be a legal challenge with that, for a spot zoning, which is not legal. We thought that the infill was the best route to take with this. Now, to the point that if we approved to say, you said we'll hold the hearing, say December, because we're going to get a lot of time. I mean, we have to post 300 properties. Each one of these folks have to be sent a certified letter. So even if we were to say that we were to hold this hearing in December, I don't think you don't necessarily have to make your decision that night. You have so much time after the hearing's held. It's 45 days. So that's putting in January where you actually make a formal decision. So we would still have 2 meetings that this could be discussed. And I mean, I'm here during the day, and I mean, I'm sure, I'm going to put Derek on the spot, but I'm sure we'd be willing to certainly have a meeting during the day like we did with the folks from the Westchester overlay. We held a meeting here, and folks could come in, and we could certainly invite the developer or the council and our engineers as well, if that would be helpful.
So do we actually have a fairly clear understanding of what the residents are concerned about in terms of providing additional information?
I think what I've heard was traffic, and he doesn't want people looking in his backyard, which I wouldn't want people looking in my backyard either.
That's pretty much it. Any other comments about that? Pardon?
They're addressed during that.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say earlier.
I mean, they're talking about 22 cars. You're not having 22 cars go in and out at the same time.
Yeah, but with deliveries and other things going on, people visiting, you have 3 friends come over for coffee, and that's 3 other cars. You have UPS coming delivery, you have Amazon making deliveries. It's not just 22 cars.
But they were talking about 22 versus 8. If the
But with
buy rate would have the 8.
With 11 homes, having people visit, having deliveries, it's more than that. I mean, I had the post office deliver a package to me today, and I had UPS deliver a package to me today. I live just up the street on Georgia. Multiply that out too. It's not just the homeowner going in and out of the community. I have friends come over, I have a party.
To the board, if I could summarize, I know that the traffic's an issue. I'd just like to summarize. What we're proposing matches what's currently there today, as you can see. I think maybe if some of you have driven around West Whiteland, you'll see infill that has now become apartment buildings that are 4 stories tall that weren't there before. 6 stories, you worked on it. So this is not an infill project where we're changing the zoning to something that's not commensurate with the development. The existing area already is 10,000 square foot lots. If these lots were built, subdivided years ago, they'd be there now. So this is matching what's there today. However, what's there today actually is apartments. there's, I believe, 6 units, if I'm not mistaken, already in there. And a daycare use that could get as many as 40 cars in the morning, 40 cars at
But
night.
they're not coming out on Isabel, they go in and out.
Okay, and if I can address that, I hear what you're saying, I was thinking this through before. If we have those cars going in, it's gonna back up 5 points that much more, you'll have that many more cars going into Isabel because that backs up. So there are, you can look at this many ways, it absolutely will make that difference. So.
It's already there now.
And I'm not going to. Overall, the cars will be reduced by this as opposed to anything else. And I think I just want to make that clear for this. I think the board should be. I think Craig has agreed, and I think it's even without doing a traffic study, we know we've done this for years. We know how this works, and the uses that are there today with 4 more homes will be far more.
Well, let's let the chief get his study out and see what. If there is anything there to this over the last 3 years.
Yeah, all that traffic's coming out on 5 points, it's not coming out on Isabel right now. So you can't say it's gonna be less. It's just, that doesn't make any sense in my viewpoint.
Was there an option to look at the design of conforming lots that actually have the cul-de-sac change and discharge on 5 points? Is that a viable option for you?
Conforming lots or not?
It would be conforming to the R3C. How many properties would you get if you had to do it that
We
way?
did look at that, with the understanding that the township did not want more traffic going out once the 5 points were.
When you talk with staff, right? When you talk with township staff.
That's just been our understanding as we talk.
Tonight, we had the residents don't want more traffic on it now.
Correct.
So basically, you're saying that it doesn't increase traffic on Isabel, but it'll increase traffic on 5 points. That doesn't make any sense at all.
I'm sorry, we're going to have to move on. It's 8:15.
One thing for me, Rob.
Well, we just interrupted one other gentleman. I encourage you to send your message, send emails,
Just
call.
put a thought in there to restrict traffic during rush hour. Can't do that. You did it on the other street. Can't do it. Okay.
All right, please avail yourself to staff as well as any of the board members if you would like to have additional conversations about this and share more detail about your concerns. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.